Chu Xiao Yu did not look back when he left the coffin shop. The wooden door closed with a dull sound, as if sealing off a former life. From that moment on, the world no longer treated him as a boy protected by shadows. Every step he took forward pressed him closer to the raw edge of fate. He carried no talismans of power, no weapons blessed by sects, only knowledge carved into his bones by survival. The five-element journey was not a quest bestowed by heaven. It was a sentence handed down by balance itself. Wood was the beginning of all things: growth, continuation, memory. But elemental wood could not be taken from living forests. It had to come from places where life had once flourished and then been violently interrupted. That was the rule. The dragon bone mirror had shown him the first location before it shattered. A drowned village, a place swallowed by water decades ago. A place where trees still stood beneath the surface. Xiao Yu walked for days, following half-erased maps and whispers that locals avoided finishing. The closer he came, the heavier the air grew. Birds disappeared. Even insects fell silent. This was not abandonment. This was avoidance. On the final night before reaching the village, he dreamed again of Longming Mountain. This time the ground cracked open. Water poured into the fissures, mixing with black smoke rising from below. When he woke, his clothes were damp, yet it had not rained. The village did not look dead. That was the first thing Xiao Yu noticed. From afar, it appeared peaceful. Half-submerged rooftops, trees rising from still water, reflections so clear they almost felt intentional. Mist hovered above the surface, thin and pale, like breath held too long. But water remembers, and this water remembered everything. Decades ago, the village had been destroyed overnight by a sudden flood. No storm upstream, no warning. The river had simply risen, fast, violent, absolute. Entire families drowned in their sleep. Those who survived fled and never returned. Official records called it a natural disaster. Feng Shui called it something else: a broken water vein, a forced redirection, a sacrifice site. Xiao Yu stepped into the water. It was cold in a way that went beyond temperature, cold with intent. The ripples spread outward, disturbing reflections that should not have existed. Faces flickered on the surface for half a second, then vanished. He ignored them. The rule was clear: do not acknowledge the drowned. At the center of the village stood an old ancestral tree. Its trunk emerged from the water like a spine, bark bleached pale, branches twisted but unbroken. This was what he had come for: waterwood, wood that had endured submersion without rotting, wood that had learned how to exist between breath and suffocation. As Xiao Yu approached, the water level began to rise, slowly, deliberately. The surface climbed his ankles, then his knees. The village reacted. Doors beneath the water creaked open. Shadows moved behind submerged windows. The silence thickened, heavy enough to press against his ears. "You don't belong here." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once, muffled, distorted, as if spoken through water-filled lungs. Xiao Yu stopped. "I know," he replied calmly. "Neither do you." That answer angered them. Hands reached up from below, pale and bloated, fingers brushing against his calves. Faces pressed up beneath the surface, mouths opening in soundless screams. They were not attacking, they were inviting. The drowned always wanted company. Xiao Yu closed his eyes and focused on the rhythm of his breathing. One breath in, one breath out. He did not resist the water rising to his waist, then his chest. At the moment it reached his neck, He placed his palm against the tree. The wood pulsed, not with warmth, but with recognition. A memory surged through him. He saw the night of the flood. He saw villagers running, children crying, water crashing. Through doorways, he saw someone upstream, redirecting the flow with crude geomantic tools, breaking the water vein to save another town downstream. This village had been chosen, sacrificed for balance. The water had never let them leave. Xiao Yu opened his eyes. "I'm not here to free you," he said quietly, "and I'm not here to join you." The water stilled. From the trunk of the tree, a section of wood cracked free on its own, floating gently toward him. Pale blue veins shimmered faintly across its surface. The first element had been granted, waterwood. The moment he took it into his hands, the village reacted violently. The water surged upward, trying to drag him down. The drowned screamed, not in anger, but in despair. He turned and walked. Each step forward caused the water behind him to collapse inward, swallowing the village once more. By the time he reached dry land, the mist had thickened, hiding everything from view. When it cleared, the village was gone. Only open water remained. Xiao Yu sat on the shore, breathing hard. The waterwood wrapped in cloth against his chest. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from understanding. The five-element journey had truly begun. And the first element had already demanded a price, memory. As night fell, far away beneath Longming Mountain, the poison dragon stirred again, drawn to the shift in balance. One element claimed, 4 more to go. And with each step forward, the path back faded further into darkness. Chu Xiao Yu did not leave the ashen town immediately. Fire rarely ends cleanly. As night fell, embers began to glow beneath the ground where he stood. Thin lines of heat traced old streets, forming patterns that resembled sigils, remnants of the geomantic array once used to ignite the fire punishment. The firewood pressed against his chest, warm and insistent. Fire was testing its bearer. From the corners of the town, figures began to appear again. Not the fire remnants from before, but something more unstable. These shapes flickered between solidity and flame, their outlines blurring, reforming, then collapsing into sparks. Unresolved. Not all resentment had been burned away. "You took the core," a voice rasped, "so you carry the aftermath." The ground trembled. The ash beneath Xiao Yu's feet suddenly ignited, not into flames, but into heat so intense it warped the air. The remnants surged forward, drawn to the firewood like moths to a dying blaze. Xiao Yu exhaled slowly. Fire demands decisiveness. He raised the firewood and struck it once against the ground. The sound was not loud, but it was absolute. A pulse of heat expanded outward, not destructive, but directive. The remnants froze mid-motion, their forms stabilizing just long enough to look at him. "This place will not burn again," Xiao Yu said, "and it will not be remembered as fuel." The heat collapsed inward. Ash settled. The embers dimmed. One by one, the remnants bowed, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Fire had accepted its conclusion. When Xiao Yu finally turned away, the ashen town no longer resisted him. The road out revealed itself clearly, unwarped by heat or illusion. Behind him, the land cooled. Fire, once claimed, never follows. Earth does not call, it waits. After the ashen town, Xiao Yu traveled inland, away from rivers and burned plains, toward land that felt heavy. Each step grew harder, as if gravity itself thickened. His dreams changed too. No floods, no fire, only pressure. The dragon bone mirror had shown him this place in fragments. A hill split by ancient stone markers, a tomb buried too deep, sealed too carefully, a place where nothing should move. The sealed tomb lay beneath a barren plateau, marked by cracked stone pillars arranged in a perfect square. No inscriptions, no names, only the unmistakable presence of suppression. This was not a grave, it was a lock. The moment Xiao Yu crossed the boundary, the ground shifted. Beneath his feet, not collapsing but tightening like soil drawing a breath it had been holding for centuries. Earth recognizes intrusion. He knelt instinctively, pressing his palm to the dirt, cold, dense, alive. "You're early," a voice murmured, not from above, but from below. It sounded muffled, compressed, as though forced through layers of stone. This seal was not meant to be opened yet. Xiao Yu stood. "I'm not here to open it," he replied. "I'm here for what remains outside the seal." The ground vibrated. From beneath the plateau, pressure surged upward, testing his footing. The waterwood cooled his breathing. The firewood steadied his resolve. Two elements held him in place as the third announced itself. Earth does not burn. Earth does not drown. Earth crushes. The stone pillars cracked. From the center of the square, the ground split open, just enough to reveal the tomb's outer layer. A massive stone lid, etched with countless handprints, pressed, so deeply they looked fused into the rock. Generations. Lives used as anchors. "This tomb holds a calamity," the voice below said. "A sin buried alive to prevent greater ruin." Xiao Yu listened carefully. "What happens if the seal weakens?" he asked. A pause. "Collapse," the voice answered. "Not of stone, but of consequence." That was enough. Xiao Yu approached the edge of the split and lowered himself carefully. He did not touch the lid. He did not step onto the seal. Instead, he moved along the perimeter, searching. Earth hides what it protects. Near one of the cracked pillars, he felt it. A section of soil that resisted pressure differently. Not sealed, reinforced, buried deliberately. He dug. The deeper he went, the heavier the earth became. Each handful of soil felt like lifting wet stone. His arms trembled, his breath shortened. Earth tests persistence. At last, his fingers struck something solid. Wood, dark brown, veined with mineral lines, surface, hardened like fossilized bark. It did not rot. It did not splinter. Earthwood, wood that had endured burial without decay. Wood that had learned patience beneath weight and silence. The moment he lifted it free, the plateau shuddered violently. The split in the ground widened for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Xiao Yu to glimpse something below. Chains, not metal, but stone, wrapped around something massive and unmoving. The seal tightened again. The pillars stopped cracking. The land exhaled. "You were careful," the voice below said. "That restraint keeps the lock intact." Xiao Yu wrapped the earthwood and secured it beside the others. 3 elements now rested against his chest. Water, fire, earth. Balance was forming, but so was tension. As he left the plateau, the weight on his shoulders did not fade. Earth does not release its lessons easily. That night, he dreamed of Longming Mountain once more. The poison dragon stirred violently now, sensing correction, sensing resistance. Stone chains strained. Water and fire clashed around it. And somewhere above, 5 empty points waited to be filled. 3 were no longer empty. Xiao Yu woke before dawn, breath heavy, resolve sharpened. 3 elements claimed. 2 remained. And the closer balance drew to completion. the less forgiving the world would become. Earth had allowed him passage, but it would remember his weight. Metal does not whisper. Metal rings. Chu Xiao Yu heard it before he saw the city. The distant echo of hammer striking anvil, rhythmic and relentless, like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to rest. The blood-forged city rose from a red plain of iron dust. Its walls were dark, layered with oxidized metal and old stains that no rain had ever washed away. No banners flew, no guards stood watch. It did not need protection. This was a city built on contracts sealed with blood. Long ago, when war consumed the region, the city's founders had made a choice: forge weapons, endlessly, without mercy, without allegiance, so long as blood continued to flow. They survived, others did not. Metal thrives on decision. Xiao Yu crossed the threshold. The sound intensified instantly. Every step rang against the ground, as if the city itself were listening, measuring his weight, his intent. The firewood burned warm, the earthwood weighed heavy. The waterwood steadied his breath. Metal demanded clarity. Inside the city, smithies lined the streets. Forges burned without fuel. Weapons hung everywhere. Blades, spears, armor, each etched with faint lines like veins. These were not decorations. Each carried a memory. A man with metal-gray eyes stepped out from a forge. His arms were scarred, skin hardened like worked steel. "You carry balance," he said. "That makes you dangerous." "I carry necessity," Xiao Yu replied. The man smiled thinly. "Then you'll understand the rule." The ground shifted. The weapons began to hum. "In this city," the man said, "metal answers only to blood." The test was not combat, it was choice. A blade slid across the ground to Xiao Yu's feet, simple, unadorned, sharp enough to split air. "Forge metal wood," the man continued, "and the city will accept you." A figure was brought forward, bound, silent, eyes resigned. Xiao Yu did not hesitate. He turned the blade and pressed it into his own palm. Blood spilled onto the forge. Metal screamed. The city shuddered as a beam of dark silver wood emerged from the furnace, surface etched with fine red lines that slowly cooled and faded. Metal wood, forged not by killing, but by taking responsibility. The bound figure was released. The man with the metal eyes bowed. Metal respects those who choose their burden. As Xiao Yu left, the ringing softened. The city receded into haze, its hunger sated for now. 4 elements rested against his chest, and the pressure became unbearable. Wood is not death. Wood is persistence. The final destination did not appear on any map. Xiao Yu found it by absence, an area where birds sang too loudly, where plants grew too thick, too fast, as if competing for space. The living grave lay beneath a forest that should not exist, trees twisted upward, roots exposed, leaves vibrant beyond reason. The air smelled rich, damp, alive, too alive. The moment Xiao Yu entered, the other elements reacted violently. Fire dulled, metal quieted, earth sank inward, water slowed. This place belonged to wood alone. At the forest's center stood a mound, earth breathing gently, rising and falling like a chest. From it grew a massive tree, trunk split down the middle, hollow and warm. The living grave. Here, those who refused to die were buried alive, sealed not to punish, but to feed the land. A voice rose from the roots. "You who stole fate," it said gently, "why do you still walk?" Xiao Yu knelt. "Because balance demands it." Roots emerged, wrapping around his legs, his arms, his chest. Not binding, embracing. Wood does not test strength, it tests willingness to remain. Visions flooded him. Lives he had disrupted, fates he had redirected, consequences yet to bloom. Wood asked one question only. Will you stay if balance requires it? Xiao Yu did not answer with words. He stepped forward and pressed his forehead against the living tree. I will remain, he said, if that is the price. The forest stilled, the roots loosened. From the heart of the tree, a final beam of pale green wood separated, light pulsing gently across its surface. Wood, not taken, given. The living grave exhaled. You may walk on, the voice said, but remember, growth always returns to claim what fed it. At dawn, Chu Xiao Yu stood alone at the forest's edge. 5 elements rested against his chest: water, restraint; fire, endurance; earth, patience; metal, responsibility; wood, continuation. The 5-element coffin could now be built. But completion was not victory. Far away, beneath Longming Mountain, the poison dragon roared. Fully awake now, chains cracking, sensing balance close to restoration. Xiao Yu turned toward home, toward the coffin shop, toward the final reckoning. Because once the coffin was complete, someone would have to lie inside. And stolen fate never settles its debt quietly. The coffin shop welcomed Chu Xiao Yu as if it had been waiting. Dust lay exactly where he had left it. The tools rested in silence. The scent of incense lingered faintly in the air, unchanged by time. From the outside, nothing suggested that the world itself was on the verge of correction. But Xiao Yu felt it. The 5 elements pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat, no longer separate lessons, but a single unstable harmony. Water cooled the burn. Fire sharpened resolve. Earth anchored his steps. Metal weighed every decision. Wood whispered of endings that became beginnings. It was time. The 5-element coffin could not be built like an ordinary coffin. No measurements were written. No diagrams existed. Xiao Yu worked by intuition, forged through tribulation. Each plank was cut only once. Each joint aligned without nails, held together by balance alone. Waterwood formed the base, quiet, steady, accepting. Firewood shaped the inner frame, resilient, enduring. Earthwood became the outer shell, heavy, patient, unyielding. Metalwood reinforced the corners, precise, unforgiving. Woodwood sealed the lid, alive, breathing softly. When the coffin was complete, the shop trembled. Outside, the sky darkened without clouds. Wind spiraled inward. Somewhere far beneath Longming Mountain, the poison dragon roared. No longer restrained by weakening chains, balance was ready to be enforced. The dragon bone mirror cracked fully, revealing its final truth. The coffin required an anchor, not a corpse, not a sacrifice chosen at random. The one who carried the stolen fate. Xiao Yu stood silently before the coffin. He thought of the door he never opened. The villages drowned and burned. The tomb that remained sealed. The city that demanded blood and accepted responsibility instead. The living grave that had offered rest. And finally, he thought of his grandmother. She appeared then, not as a vision, not as a ghost, but as presence, standing at the edge of perception, just beyond reach. You did well, she said softly. Better than I ever could. Xiao Yu shook his head. You stole a life to save me. She smiled. And you learned how to return it. The ground split open outside the shop. From the depths, the poison dragon rose, vast, corroded, bound by fragments of broken seals. Its eyes burned with resentment accumulated over centuries. Each breath warped the air, dragging hatred and imbalance into the world. The coffin responded. The 5 elements resonated as one. Xiao Yu lay down inside. There was no fear, only clarity. As the lid closed, the coffin sank, not into earth, but into alignment. The dragon's roar cut short, its form drawn downward, bound not by force, but by correction. The stolen fate unraveled, thread by thread, returning to where it belonged. The world exhaled. When dawn came, the storm was gone. Longming Mountain stood silent once more. The poison dragons slept, no longer suppressed, but resolved. The coffin shop was empty. No coffin remained, only tools and peace. Somewhere, a child took a first breath. Somewhere else, an old debt finally closed. Balance had been restored, and the price had been paid in full. If you've walked this journey from beginning to end, thank you for carrying it with us. Stories like this are not about power, but about balance, consequence, and the quiet choices that decide who we become. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring dark folklore, spiritual stories, and fate-bound journeys. Follow for future series and new worlds. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. This chapter has ended, but every ending opens the door to another story. And somewhere, another fate is already beginning.